Dr. Kate, welcome to the show. It is so lovely to have you. Thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Vanessa. I'm really excited to chat today.
Yeah, I'm excited as well. We've been chatting a little bit, before coming on air and, just sort of setting the stage a little bit. I feel like what we're going to be speaking about, which largely is gut health, we've been laughing because it's like how much content can we possibly ingest? No pun intended. When it comes to gut health, like it's everywhere, right? We're seeing so much information, but I think a lot of it is confusing. And we've done even a few shows here where we've talked about gut health. But I think, and I'm really excited about this, we're going to kind of give a fresh perspective, something that's not overwhelming today. I think a lot of people are struggling and suffering. And so I'm excited to sort of see what you've got in terms of not only information, but just your perspective and how to handle things that's not overwhelming in a space that is completely overwhelming. So, again, I'm excited to have you and I cannot wait to dig in.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat about this stuff because it is so important and there is so much overwhelming information out there. So I think this will hopefully help simplify it for people.
I know it will. I know it will. Well, I think it's important that we start with your story because you have quite an interesting one, and I think one in ways that maybe some can identify with, but it's a little bit unique too. As we were saying, not everybody's got something as dramatic as some of the things that you've experienced. So, why don't you give us a little bit of background on why you're doing what you're doing and what got you to this place?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I got into the functional medicine world because of my own chronic gut issues. I dealt with really severe constipation and bloating and acid reflux when I was 24. I hadn't had a single bowel movement for 13 days, and I was on Miralax for 11 of those days. And so you too as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Oh.
so it was just, it was wild because I was 24 years old. I was super fit, very healthy. Granted, I didn't eat very clean at the time because I was always that skinny fat person, who just never gains weight the whole life. So, but yeah, I was really fit. I was a former D1 athlete. And so it just didn't make sense, like I looked around me at all of my friends who were healthy, same age as me. Nobody had these issues. And I was like, what the heck is going on? And I went to a medical doctor because that's what you do is go to the GI doctor. And they just gave me two terrible options. They said, number one, we could give you a drug that, one of the major side effects is permanent facial twitches, or we could remove your intestines. And so I never went back to that doctor. I was like, heck no, I'm not doing either of these two options. That's crazy. And, I was very blessed to have a mom who was very natural and holistic minded growing up. So that immediately my, red flags kind of went off in my head. And I was like, you know what? I'm good. I'm going to go find someone else. And, I was blessed to be able to find this doctor who he was a chiropractor who did myofascial release and organ manipulation in the abdomen, which is a very niche thing. Like, not very many people know how to do that. I'm sure there's lots of people on here who've been to a massage therapist and they've never touched their abdomen. But this stuff was life changing. I swear I lost like 10 pounds that night. It was just such a relief to be able to go to the bathroom. I left the office thinking to myself, what the heck did I just pay for? Because anyone who's ever had myofascial release done, it's very gentle, it's very light, it doesn't feel like they're doing anything. And I paid this guy hundreds of dollars for that initial consult, and I was like, what the heck just happened? But then, you know, I had tons of waste come out that night, and I felt like a new person. And so this is why I'm so passionate about gut health. I remember being in that place. I was young, I was healthy. It didn't make sense, wondering why everyone around you, was doing fine, but you're the one who somehow has these horrible stomach pains and constipation and bloating. And I couldn't even eat small amounts of food without feeling severely bloated in my upper abdomen. And so I know, what my patients have been through. And I think that that really is, an important point for a lot of people who work with me is they want someone who understands what they're going through. I think that's, a lot of people really like that about, my story is, I've been there. I've been there, I've gotten through it, I'm on the other side of it. And so it's also, gives me a lot of ability to really speak life and speak hope into people of just, like I was worse off than you and I'm fine now. So you're going to be okay. And so I think people just really need to hear that. But, from that point, obviously that didn't fix 100% of the issue. I had to completely overhaul my diet. I went super strict paleo, gluten-free, dairy-free, which is a really extreme diet. I was basically just eating meat, fruit, eggs, and vegetables for about a decade. But it never fixed the issue. Every time I strayed from that diet, all of my symptoms would come back. If I went out to eat with friends and I would get, a pizza, even gluten-free pizza, I would still feel terrible for 5 days. I'd be bloated, constipated. And so I just avoided those foods for almost a decade. And I was like, well, I guess this is my life now. I just have to, have this extreme diet to feel okay. And then I had a really stressful life event happen, and all my symptoms came back, and they were worse than they were when I was 24. And so, that's a huge component that I know you talk a lot about on your podcast is stress and how it really affects, your immune system, your gut health, your brain, like so many different things that stress can really just wreck your health. And, luckily my friend was in town. She's a functional medicine doctor. And I was telling her everything that was going on. And I was on the verge of an autoimmune disease. I mean, it was bad because I never really fixed the root issue. Like my gut was still messed up. I just wasn't adding more to the fire. And so I was basically just, symptom managing with food. But I was telling her everything going on. My knee would swell up randomly. I'd get random joint pains all over out of nowhere. And she just looked at me and she's like, Kate, you either have parasites or you have Lyme disease or both because this doesn't make any sense. And so she did some testing for me, found a huge parasite infection. I had all sorts of other stuff going on too. It wasn't just parasites, but that's obviously the thing I talk the most about on Instagram. So everyone always wants to know, what parasite cleanse did you use? But it really was, looking at the full picture. But I had this 3 foot parasite that I passed, like month 2 or 3 that I was working with her. And ever since I passed that parasite, all my symptoms started going away. My bloating was completely gone. I started going to the bathroom 2 to 3 times a day, which I hadn't even done pretty much my whole life. And, all the acid reflux went away. I lost like 25 pounds over the next like 6 months. It was really easy. I think it was just inflammation.
Yeah.
And I've seen this happen with so many people where they're like, I lost a ton of weight. And I'm like, no, you probably just lost a bunch of inflammation because we healed, the root cause of it. And so I just felt like a brand new person. And ever since then, I've just been able to help, hundreds of women heal from IBS, bloating, acid reflux, constipation, all those things, just because of that experience. So I just went all in after that because I just felt like a brand new human being. And, I was just like, this is amazing. And I wish more people knew about this.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing, first of all. And you said so many things. I was like trying to tab them all in my head because I
Yeah.
relate so much to what you say. And also, I just am so grateful for just like following, I guess, like just following the call that you sort of had on your life, because truly it is often, and we were kind of talking about this a bit off air before we came on, where like suffering leads to sort of, whatever you're supposed to be doing. And you were obedient enough, right, to like step into
Yeah.
that. And now you're helping all these people, but it doesn't come
Yeah.
without so much trial and oftentimes, like we were saying, so much suffering. And I think it's tough because we were led to believe when we're younger, and I think things are changing, but oh, you just go to the standard doctor and they're going to give you X, Y, and Z thing and you're going to be fine. But and if if people have been around this show any amount of time, I always say, there's a lot of doctors just doing their best and
Yeah.
doing what they're trained to do, but these people are not trained to do what we often need. It's symptom
Exactly.
management. It's symptom management. And I was on the same thing as you. I was laughing when you said Miralax because I remember those days. I remember walking into the GI doc at 24 years old, which is pretty much the same exact time as you said. And I had 2 colonoscopies by the time I was 26.
Oof.
I was a mess. I mean, 7, 8 days without going to
Yeah.
the restroom and no
Mhm.
answers, and looking back, if I would have known what I know now, things would have been so different. So I relate in so many ways. And yeah, it's just wild. And I'm so grateful for where we are in terms of like the functional space, the alternative health community space, and like the information that's able to get out to people now, thanks
Mhm.
to people like you. But it's so sad that it's for so many people, which we're going to get into, it's been such a challenge, or it still is a challenge because they don't know where to turn. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think so many people have probably been through the same things that we have. But obviously, like I grew up in the South, like nobody ever talks about, bowel movements and pooping. So it's like you never know if they had any issues. And it's so funny even working with people in the South because you ask them, like, I'm used to it because I've been doing this for years, but I'll ask them all these questions, about their bowel movements and they just get really kind of like deer in headlights. And I'm like, it's okay. I'm a doctor. I just need to know this stuff to figure out, what's going on in your body. But yeah, I mean, it is scary, like if you don't know what's going on. And I was just so blessed to like be referred to that doctor. Like if I hadn't found him, I don't know what would have happened. I might have had to go on that drug or, get some surgery to get part of my bowels removed or something like that. So I'm just really grateful that, I found an answer when I did.
Yeah.
But yeah, and a lot of people just, like you, go years without figuring it out. And yeah, the next step that they recommended for me was a colonoscopy and an endoscopy, and I just never went back. I was like, I'm good. I'm gonna
Uh,
pass on that for now.
You were
So
you were you were smart. I mean, and again, there's a time and a place for these things, and there's extreme circumstances. Like I understand,
yeah,
but I think there's just so much unnecessary testing because it's just like this routine thing, and you're kind of just looked at in the conventional space as just a product or a number, right? It's like you're
yep,
not being looked at as an individual because they're just trained a certain way. And again, a lot of them are doing the best they can with what they know, but what they know
yeah,
is not what we need to be doing or what we need different. And
exactly.
yeah,
And I think what a lot of people don't know either, just talking about the colonoscopy and the endoscopy and all the testing that people generally do, is because I get this question a lot from people. They're like, well, all my tests are normal. They found nothing on my endoscopy, nothing on colonoscopy. My blood work's normal. And I just look at them and I'm like, they're looking for disease.
that's
If
right.
you don't fall in that category of cancer, tumor, cyst, full-blown disease they can physically see or that lights up on blood work, they just tell you that nothing's wrong with you and that you're fine. And it's not their fault. Like you said, this is what they're taught in medical school. One of my good friends that, we grew up together since middle school, she's an MD, and we talk all the time. Like I'll ask her medical questions. She'll ask me, like what supplements do you recommend for this issue? Or, how would you approach this thing? And it's just so cool because most medical doctors want to be able to fix their patients and they get frustrated just being stuck in the hospitals, the insurance telling them how they can treat their patients. It's this whole system that people don't understand. And I think the important thing to, come away from conversations like this with is that they really do want to help you. They're not, out to get you or just, gaslighting you. They literally just don't know how to treat those subclinical issues that aren't full-blown cancer, full-blown tumor, full-blown like cysts growing or ulcers in your colon. If they don't see anything, they don't really know what else to do.
Right.
And so I think that's where functional medicine and integrative medicine and holistic, healthcare really thrives is figuring out those subclinical issues. But there's no one who's going to be better for you in a trauma emergency situation than a medical doctor. So
Right.
so I think we need to also give them that respect too, is that they're the ones who can save your life if you get in an emergency accident. And we're the ones who are better for long-term health and actually getting to the root cause of
Yeah.
those chronic issues.
It's a beautiful point, and it really is so true. I mean, we need conventional medicine. We need,
Mhm.
medical doctors and to your point, like they really most of them out there are they care, and they're but and more so now than ever, their hands are tied. We've talked a lot on this show about how they are kind of like how they're stuck in many ways. We've talked about
Yeah.
insurance and, how they're under the thumb of these big conglomerates and, they're only, it's just designed to kind of keep you in the system versus get you out because money is not made, unfortunately, when you're well. And so
Yep.
it's a tough thing. And again, they're doing the best that they can. And I think a lot of medical doctors are seeing that now and also trying to find ways where they can go other routes, which I think is a beautiful thing, but it shouldn't
Yeah.
have to be that way. It's sad, right? It's
Yeah.
sad that like to go through all that training and to go through, I mean, I can only imagine, I've said this before here, I can only imagine being in a situation where you've gone through all these years of schooling and residency and this and that,
Hmm.
and then to kind of come to this moment where you're going, wait, am I really helping people like the way that I thought I was going to, and have to pivot
Yeah.
or maybe just decide, no, I'm not going to pivot, like I just get to stay here and this is just my job and I'm just going to do the best I can with what I have.
Yeah, and they're essentially, because they're in so much debt by the time they become a doctor and go through residency and they've spent like 12 years of their life getting to the point where they're actually getting paid like a doctor, they're kind of, like you said, their hands are tied. Even if they wanted to leave, even if they wanted to go do something else, by that point they're married, have kids, have families, they have responsibilities they have to take care of, and they're just kind of tied by that debt. And so opening a private practice is really scary. They don't want to, risk like, oh, am I going to be able to, feed my family? And so there's all these other aspects that we need to kind of consider in that sense. But yeah, those are some great points that you made.
Yeah, likewise. No, it's so true. Gosh. Well, let's see. where do I want to go from here? There's so many things to tackle, but I think we've got a semi good plan. And I feel like, just talking about this, I feel like the logical place to start is, and probably what a lot of people are wanting to hear, is just what are your thoughts? What is your perspective on, and we've sort of semi tackled it already, but just more specifically, why even in a functional space, not just in a conventional space, but even in a functional space, why people go after healing their gut, healing their microbiome, and so forth, but they're not seeing healing. They're not seeing results that they desire. They're still struggling and suffering. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And honestly, the biggest thing that I get is that people are so focused on one aspect of healing, and they'll literally just, there's all these, and there's so much confusion in, social media, online that people are just honestly, they don't know what to do. And I get messages from people all the time who are just like, I don't even know where to start. I don't know who to trust. I don't know what is actually going to get me the results I need. Like, can you help me? Because they're just so overwhelmed with all the information. I think the biggest thing I see is that, people get so focused on, oh, I'm just going to do a mold test or a parasite test or heavy metal test, or I'm just going to see, if I have leaky gut and then just go from there. But all of those things are important. Like you have to get this full picture. Like I always kind of tell people, the human body is like a symphony. If you're only fixing the flutists, I don't know if that's the right way to say
Yeah,
what flute
yeah.
flute players, yeah. If you're only fixing like the flute players, but you don't address, like the cello or the violin, the sound is still going to be off. Like if you're only focusing on one piece of the puzzle, you're going to miss all this other stuff. And so there's such a we're so used to this idea in medicine that everything needs to be segmented. You have a cardiologist for your heart, you have a neurologist for your brain, you have a GI doctor for your gut. All of those systems function together. Like every organ system in the body is constantly communicating with other organ systems, with other cells, other tissues. And if you don't look at the full picture, you're never going to fully heal. And a lot of people don't know your brain will, there's that huge brain gut connection. If you have head injuries, if you have whiplash injuries, that can actually damage that nerve in the bottom of your brainstem, the vagus nerve, that actually stimulates your gut to function and actually helps regulate your heart rate. Like I had a really severe head injury where I almost died like 6 years before the gut issues came up. And after learning all the neurology stuff that I did in practice, I realized like, oh, that's why my heart almost stopped when I got in that accident because I damaged that part of the brainstem that controls heart rhythm and regulates that heart rate. And when the paramedics got there, my heart rate was in like the 20s and they thought they were going to have to like use the paddles. I had to get life flighted. It was a whole thing. I ended up being fine. I was so lucky. Like it's just, I was so like God was definitely, watching over me at that point in my life because even the paramedics were like, we've rarely ever seen anyone walk out of that kind of accident and be completely fine. And so, because I went back and like gave them like this big thing of like chocolates and stuff to thank them
Oh,
for helping me. But that brain gut connection is so huge. And I never put that together until I went into, functional neurology and chiropractic school. And they talk about how certain parts of the brain control organ function, control muscle firing, joint firing, posture, movement. And it was just so fascinating. And so I would do this neuro stuff before I even got into functional medicine and people's gut issues would get better. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And just like, fixing, eye movement dysfunction or vestibular dysfunction or brainstem. And so that's a huge piece of the puzzle. And then you have to look at liver and gallbladder function. If you're
mm-hmm.
not digesting your food properly, if you're not killing off those infections that come in through your food and through your hands when you touch your mouth, your stomach acid is number one. And then your gallbladder secretes bile salts in the small intestines to continue digesting that food and continue killing off parasites, bacteria, viruses. If those organs aren't functioning well, you're going to have all this waste and undigested food going into the gut, creating chronic inflammation, leading to leaky gut, killing off the good microbiome, leading to that dysbiosis or SIBO or, all those things that you hear people say they have. And there's just so many factors to it. And so you also have to consider, well, what else is damaging the gut? Like we know from research that chronic stress creates leaky gut. And for those of you who don't know what leaky gut is, it's basically a breakdown of that gut lining. So you have like little holes in here. And when your gut lining gets inflamed from things like infections or toxins or chronic inflammation of some other sort, it'll cause that gut lining to expand and you get these giant, holes in there where now food can slip into your bloodstream, trigger an immune response, create those food sensitivities like gluten and dairy that I had, like most people have nowadays. And so it's really just a breakdown of that gut lining is so important. There's no probiotic that's going to fix a leaky gut. Like you have to actually remove, the stuff that's damaging that gut lining and allow it to heal because our bodies are designed to heal when they're given the right environment. And so calming down the nervous system, like down regulating that stress response is so incredibly important in the healing journey, especially, as we were talking about before we started, that chronic stress over time, really leads to a lot of, just a lot of issues like mentally. And so we've really got to heal up that gut line and just kind of affect, whole body health. And so those are probably the biggest things I see is like looking at one piece of the puzzle instead of realizing that the whole body works together. Insulin resistance can also create a lot of inflammation that can lead to, gut breakdown. And there's so many different things to consider. You really have to look at the full picture. So I'd say that's probably number one for me.
Wow. Wow. That was so fantastic. And I was just like, not most people listen to the show versus watch it, but I'm over here like not bobbing my head, right? Like, I totally get it. I totally get it. Because fortunately today I feel like I've been privy to a lot of knowledge now. So I understand these concepts that you're talking about. It makes so much sense, but also my own experiences, right? The things that I've
Mm-hmm.
seen in my own life. And I absolutely love the fact that you touched on, oh gosh, everything. But I love the fact that you touched on the nervous system, because I feel like people are just unaware of how drastic this point is, and the vagus nerve. And I was just thinking about this week, and I can share a little bit here, but just, about, how it affects your gut, and you're not even thinking about it, but this vagus nerve runs all the way down, and it affects every single thing that basically it like just affects, I mean, more than me, but it affects everything. It
Yeah.
affects everything. And so to be able to regulate, and it's not about always being calm, it's just about being resilient, and to be able to have a system that can move, back and forth in terms of your nervous system. And I
Yeah.
love the fact that you touched on liver and gallbladder. And this has been a challenge for me personally. I've seen my gallbladder health, I should say, shift up and down. And I've had some issues with it, particularly in the last couple of years. And I have my suspicions as to why. But they've also been exacerbated. And it's like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? But they've been
Yeah.
exacerbated by things like the flu or things like salmonella. And I have sort of seen the taxation there and how it's like, the virus itself, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this. The virus itself may have quote unquote moved on or become, not there anymore, or dormant, or however we want to look at it. Or the bacteria it's not quote unquote like virally present, or not viral in a quote type of way, not an actual virus type of way. It's not
Yeah.
like, it's not showing its face, but there's like residual issues that you're left with. And now you have these symptoms that are just like not going away, but they started because of this thing that occurred. So I would love your thoughts
Yeah.
on this too, because I feel like this probably plays into my original question, which was, why are people just not seeing results?
Yeah, I mean that's a great point. Like you made a lot of good points in there. I do talk about this on my page because it's such
Mm.
an important thing for people to understand. Food poisoning is not always food poisoning. And what I mean by that is, and I hear this from so many people where they're like, yeah, my husband and I went to eat at this Mexican restaurant, or we got fish, or and I got food poisoning. I got really sick, so it must have been bad fish. And I'll ask them, I'm like, well, did you guys eat the same food? Yeah. Did your husband get sick? No. Then it wasn't food poisoning. It was a reflection of your body's ability to fight off infections and fight off bacteria or parasites or whatever the heck was in that food. Because if you have a healthy immune system, you should be able to consume parasites and bacteria or be exposed to a virus and not get extremely sick, to the point where you have food poisoning symptoms and you have to go to the hospital to get, rehydrated because you just can't keep anything down. And I've seen that with people who say they've gotten food poisoning 3 times in the last year. And I'm like, yeah, that's not food poisoning. That is your body telling you that your gut is struggling. Your gut is toxic. It can't handle anything else. And what people don't realize too is that 80% of your immune system lives in your gut. If you have gut issues, you have immune system issues. Autoimmunity starts with leaky gut. That was proven like what, 5 or 6 years ago. That when that breakdown of the gut lining happens, that is the biggest trigger for autoimmunity to start. And I think that's why I was on the verge of an autoimmune disease, 10 years into these gut issues that I had, because I never fixed the leaky gut. I didn't even know what leaky gut was back then. I never fixed, the parasite infection I had. I never fixed the fungal overgrowth, the gallbladder issues, all those other things that were going on in my body. And there's just so many things at work. Like I did a microbiology degree in undergrad because I was initially going to go to med school. And so you study gut health primarily. I thought it was just going to be the study of viruses, parasites, all that stuff. Like 60 to 70% of it is studying the gut microbiome, which is that bacteria that lives in your gut. And this is so important for your overall health. Like these bacteria, I believe there's more bacteria in your gut than there are cells in your entire body. Like it's pretty profound, how much of these little living creatures just keep us alive and do all these functions that our body needs. It's wild. But they're so important for producing nutrients, absorbing nutrients, helping with hormone regulation, producing serotonin and dopamine and storing it in the gut. So that's where the mental health aspect comes into gut health. And, if you wipe out a lot of these good bacteria with things like antibiotics, with things like, even most prescription meds will have an effect on your microbiome, especially birth control is a big one. And I think that's why a lot of women have such bad gut issues because they were on birth control for so long, or people who've done Accutane and it damages their liver and also their gut. And, there's so many different things that really just affect that microbiome that if you don't have the proper bacteria to really help fight off this stuff or to produce enough nutrients for your body to use to fight off, these infections, then you're going to get sick. You're going to get viruses expressed because, as you said, viruses only express themselves when your immune system is compromised. And the number one thing that tanks your immune system is chronic stress. And so if you don't calm the nervous system down, if you don't remove other co-infections, like fungal overgrowth or bacterial overgrowth like SIBO, or if you don't get rid of toxins in your body that could be damaging that gut lining, then it's going to be really hard for your body to actually get back to a state where your immune system functions well and you're not getting sick all the time. You're not getting food poisoning. Like, for example, I had food poisoning twice before that severe gut issue started, and it was in the span of like a month. I had food poisoning twice where I had to go to the hospital because I literally was so sick that I had to go to the hospital and get IV fluids because I couldn't keep anything down. And at the time, I just thought, wow, I'm just getting really unlucky eating all this, this bad food. But it was really just a reflection of my gut was messed up and, my immune system was not functioning. And so anything that I was putting in my body that wouldn't normally affect a healthy person was severely affecting me. And so I think that's the biggest thing I see with, food poisoning and people who get sick all the time. Like one of the biggest things I get from people, which is so cool because they don't really realize that immune gut connection until it actually happens for them. They're like, yeah, every year I'm around my nieces, my nephews, babies. I get sick all the time. And we'll be like 4 months into a detox. And I'm like, oh, have you gotten sick at all this winter? And it's like in the middle of winter. And they're like, no, I haven't gotten sick once, but my whole family did. And I was fine. And it's so cool because all we're doing is just restoring organ function and removing the stressors that are damaging them in the first place. And then the body can heal itself. But you have to get rid of those stressors to get it to that point.
Yeah. Wow. So, so, so good. And I'm sitting here just going, gosh, the umbrella really is stress. And it doesn't necessarily
Yeah.
have to be psychological or emotional stress, which oftentimes, though, it is.
Mm-hmm.
But it's stress. A stressor could be, a lot of things. It could be your diet. It could be the fact that you don't sleep for more than 4 hours a night. It could be a toxic
Yep.
relationship. It could be the fact that you've got, like in my case, I'll throw myself out right now and just, like a severe physical challenge or affliction that I regularly deal with, that it's constantly running in the background. And so that is putting constant stress on the body, and to be able to
Yeah.
manage that and to find the tools, because it's not impossible, but to find the tools to, again, address the nervous system, really like probably simple things and things that I should probably be doing more of. I mean, I try, but there's always things that we slack on. And
Yeah.
I can get lazy because sometimes I'm tired, I get tired and I just want to do nothing.
Yeah.
But it really does. It comes back to stress, and in various forms. So it's wild. And I just wanted to make a quick note about the food poisoning because it's so true. Like I love the fact that you went in that direction. And if for me it was wild because I think like up until this, so it was like it was actually like last year this time, probably like this week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got that crazy, and I think it was chicken is where I think it came from. You know, like looking back, I was actually the only person to get sick out of the people that were eating the chicken, but I also had an individual piece of chicken that I think was probably a little
Little
questionable.
suspect.
A little
Yeah.
suspect, yeah. But it was to like you, it was so severe. T- I was one step away from having to go to the hospital, and I lost my vision, as a matter of fact, for about my vision in total. I'm talking complete
Oh
black
my
for
goodness. Wow.
probably close to 2 minutes, which
Wow. That's
for
scary.
that doesn't seem like a long time, but when you actually you have full vision and you lose your vision. And I think my body went into such shock
Yeah.
from what was happening. I had never experienced anything so. And looking back, even when it was happening, as scared as I was, because I was scared because I didn't know what was happening. But I kept telling myself, Vanessa, whatever it is that is happening in your body right now, your body is doing everything it can to purge whatever it is that has infiltrated your system. And so you just have
Yeah.
to work with it, you know, as hard as this is. And
Yeah.
yes, you know, eventually things got better and things got, you know, like thank God. But that little episode, or I should say large episode, I definitely saw small to moderate changes through the last year that were gut related that I hadn't been dealing with because I'd healed, you know, really healed 80 to 90% of these gut symptoms that I used to have.
Yeah.
Those things started to show their face. They started to return. And
Mm-hmm.
as you know, just a couple of months ago, and a lot of my listeners know, I got the flu, which I hadn't had the flu in, I don't even know how long. I mean, I don't know, decade, two, I don't know. And that took me out. And so I feel like the combination between the two, my gut was just like, yeah, so girl, we gotta like figure this out. We gotta figure this out, you know, because I'm
Yeah.
taxed and I need some help. So that's actually where I'm currently. I'm currently sort of building back resiliency from these
Mm-hmm.
things. So yeah, just a little input from my own personal experience right now, which was part of the reason why I was so excited to do this episode because I
Yeah.
thought, wow, this is great timing.
Yeah. I know God's like that, right? Divine timing.
Absolutely. And I'm always learning. I don't care. I
Yeah.
was, you know, I think I said recently on an episode, the more that I learn, the less that I know. And
Oh, 100%. Oh
right?
my
I mean, it's
goodness.
so
Yeah.
true. It's so true. It's like I'm constantly learning and constantly humbled and just, you know, be having an open mind and realizing that you can have what you think is all the knowledge in the world and you're still going to be learning more.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's what's so cool about medicine in general or natural health, the human body. There's so much that we still don't know. And there's so much that we don't know that we don't know, and so
Yes.
I think it's so important. And what makes someone an amazing practitioner is knowing that, is saying, okay, the more I learn, the more I realize I don't actually know as much as I think I do, which is good because it's so exciting to just know, like, the next thing I learn could really help someone in a way that I wouldn't be able to help them a year ago, which I think is so valuable. And I think that, there is a lot of ego in medicine, like even among chiropractors, it's not just medical doctors. There's this ego of, well, I have a doctorate in front of my name, so I know more than you. And a lot of people get stuck in that. And it's really sad that they stop learning as soon as they graduate. And I'm just like, how are you going to help those people who are, maybe not in that 60 to 70% of what your technique actually helps, but they're in that 30%. And those are the people who see us, someone like you or me, or other practitioners. And, if you stop learning, you're not going to be able to help a lot of people who are coming to you, who are looking for hope, who are looking for a solution. And I think that could be really damaging because some people just give up after seeing
That's so
so
true.
many doctors. They're just like, well, I'm done. Nothing's working for me. But, I think the biggest thing to understand is that there is something out there that will work for you. You just haven't found it yet. And I think just having that mindset of I haven't found the solution yet really helps people just keep going. And I think that's one of the benefits of, working with a practitioner and not trying to do it on your own, besides just, getting to the root of the root cause faster. But I think it's just having someone who can just speak life into you and say, hey, look, I know you've seen all these doctors, I know you spent all this money, but this is how I'm going to help you get better, and we're going to target all the aspects of health. We're not just going to go after leaky gut. We're not just going to go after insulin resistance. We're going to look at everything, and I'm going to give you strategies to get all those things back on track, and then we'll see what's left over. And that's when things like diet and supplements can really be beneficial after you heal that foundational level.
Yeah, really, really well said. I could not agree more. Just on every
Yeah.
single point. Yeah, it's just so important. You said just now. You said supplements and diet and everything, because I know that your perspective or your philosophy is like changing those. While it's so helpful, like obviously we don't want to be eating terrible food and crap,
Yeah.
and supplements can be so just so profound. I mean, so helpful, and I'm a huge proponent of supplements. I don't think that we should rely on them like like they're not Bible. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I think supplements have their place. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that I take them and I cycle them and I use them and all of that. But can you speak to why, like, just taking in or starting supplements or even changing your diet is not necessarily going to be like the end all be all if that's all that you do in a lot of cases? Because I think some people just want that quick fix, that pill, that thing that's going to make the difference.
Yeah, I mean, you just said it right there. We're so inundated with this idea of, one solution or one problem, one solution, because
Yeah.
that's how the medical system works. If you're diagnosed with, XYZ disorder, you get this pill or this pill. There's like two options. And so I think people are so stuck in this mindset of, everyone asks me all these general questions, and I'm sure you get this too, on social media or through your podcast, but they'll ask, how do you fix leaky gut? Question mark. And I'm just like, I don't know anything about your health history. I don't know anything about what symptoms you're having. There are so many different things that could help someone. There's no way to know, but everyone is just looking for that one thing. And you're right. And it's not to say that diet and supplements don't ever fix people. Like I know, like, there's trolls on Instagram who are just like, well, I healed with diet, so I don't know why you're posting this. And I'm like, okay, great. That's amazing. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the other people, like me who tried diet, extreme diet, who tried supplementation. I had a graveyard of supplements in my kitchen cabinet that never helped me. But I was trying all this stuff, trying to figure out, what was the solution to my gut health. And so I think the biggest thing with that is that, it's such a holistic approach where you've really got to know how every system in your body is functioning to really fully heal, 100%, and not just get like, a little bit of improvement with symptoms, like 20% better, but now all your symptoms come back once you get off that supplement. And I think that, the supplement industry is so big because people, like you said, they're looking for that one solution. Like, oh, it's colostrum, or it's this fancy probiotic that was designed in a lab that's shown to do this with all these peer-reviewed clinical studies. And it's like, okay, great, that might work for like, someone else, but it might also wreck your gut. And I've seen that so many times. Like, probiotics are the number one thing people recommend if you have gut issues. Most of the people I talk to, being on a probiotic wrecked their gut. Like they went on a probiotic thinking it was going to help them, and it made them so much worse. And you have to think too, if you have this really toxic environment in your gut where you're getting food poisoning, because like you said earlier, that was such a good point, that's an indication of high toxicity in your body, and it's trying to violently eject all those toxins. If you have that where you're getting food poisoning a lot, you're getting, like loose stool, that's basically toxicity in the colon, and you're just trying to add a bunch of bacteria into an already dysfunctional, microbiome, you're probably going to make the issue a lot worse. And so, you really got to understand too that I personally am a fan of probiotics when given at the right time.
Yeah.
We've really got to heal the leaky gut. We've got to restore the microbiome by removing the things that are, wiping it out in the first place. Like things like parasites really destroy your gut lining. Fungus destroys your gut lining, mold toxicity, heavy metals, chemicals, pesticide residue, all that stuff. If you don't clean that stuff up and you just try to add something into your system, it might be the wrong thing that could really wreck you. And so I think that's why people don't get answers, because they're not looking at the full picture. Like, again, like you said, they're like, well, I have bloating. What supplement helps with bloating? They'll go on Google, find this miracle supplement, try it out. Oh, it didn't work for me. They'll try out another one. And then by the time they get to me, they've already spent, thousands of dollars on supplements that didn't help them. And it's because we'll do testing and say, okay, the reason this didn't help you is because you have fungal overgrowth in your gut, or you have parasites, or you have heavy metals in your system that are constantly damaging those cells. It doesn't matter how many nutrients you put in your body. If your body can't absorb them, they're not going to be used. And so you're really just creating that expensive pee and expensive poop that we were talking about before we started the recording of just, that's another piece of the puzzle. If you have a leaky gut, if your microbiome is destroyed, if you've got gut issues for a long time, you're probably not absorbing things very well.
Yeah.
So even if you're taking a multivitamin or amino acids or, fatty acids like omega 3s, you might only be absorbing 20% of it instead of, 90 to 100%. And so, yes, it might help you, maintain your results a little bit, but as soon as you come off them, you might feel a lot worse because your body just has an inability to absorb. And if you don't have liver and gallbladder function working correctly, you can't even digest food or supplements down to a small enough level to even be absorbed if your gut is functioning. And so there's so many different factors, but those are probably the biggest ones that I see.
I know this is probably a tough question to to answer in, a sentence or two, and it's probably different depending on the person. But if someone was in this position where, say, their absorption was low, or their liver and gallbladder, which is so heavily tied to digestion, was just really working at a subpar level,
Mhm.
is there a set of symptoms that you generally see that are across the board with most people?
Um, you know, I mean, I'd say a lot of people come see me for constipation and bloating. I'd say those are like probably the top two things that people deal with. But back to like your question from earlier, the solution for all of them is going to be different. Like you could line up 10 people with constipation that I've worked with. They all had completely different care plans because they had completely different organ function, completely different stress levels, completely different, emotional dysregulation, completely different social circles, family dynamics, infections, toxins, all that stuff that we talked about already. And so you really have to kind of approach things individually. But I'd say the top two symptoms I see from people who reach out to me are constipation and bloating.
Yeah, that makes sense. I
Yeah.
think it's worth mentioning too, and I would love your take on it. And I had a practitioner, a fantastic practitioner, come on the show about a year or so ago, and we talked about gut health as well, Kim Heinz, and she had a story where she actually didn't have like super severe gut problems,
Hmm.
but she suffered with debilitating migraines for way over a decade, and was her whole life was so compromised, and it was
Yeah.
fixing her gut microbiome that got
Hmm.
rid of the migraines. So what do you have to say
Yep.
about people who have struggling gut health, but they don't have gut symptoms?
That is such a good question. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that before, but it's a great one.
Oh,
Because
good. Okay.
yeah, your gut, like we talked about earlier, your gut affects everything. It is literally like the hub for the health of your entire body. I mean, you've got, the mental health molecules like serotonin and dopamine produced and stored in the gut. That you have this subset of bacteria, the estrobolome, that regulates hormones. Your gut bacteria are constantly communicating with your brain. But I think the biggest thing I see is if you kind of look at how the body removes waste and removes toxins, I think that'll explain a lot more of the brain issues a lot better to people. So if you think about, you know, um, kind of like a bathtub. If you fill it too much and it goes over, it's going to flood and, like ruin your whole bathroom and you'll have to get like water remediation and all that stuff. So, if you think about your body like that, there's three organs that get rid of toxins that you're exposed to and waste products that your body produces on a daily basis. Every cell in your body is constantly producing waste every day and it has to go somewhere, right? We don't want it to just sit around our organs and create inflammation and problems. So basically what happens is all that waste that you produce on a daily basis, your lymphatic system pulls it out. It's kind of like the sewage system in your body. It sends it to the liver to be detoxed and broken down. The liver is going to send it, to the gut. The gallbladder is going to contribute too. And all that waste is supposed to go out the toilet. In bowel movements, you should have 2 to 3 solid bowel movements every single day to have good functioning gut health. Now, obviously, if you're on something like carnivore diet, it's just, if you just have one good bowel movement a day, then you're totally fine because that's a lot different. But typically for most people, 2 to 3 times a day. If there's something wrong, if you're not pooping enough, if you have leaky gut, if you have IBS, toxicity in the gut where you're getting lots of loose stool, you're going to have an issue with drainage. And so you kind of have to think about that bathtub is at like a normal level. Everyone's got a threshold their body can handle. And over time, it's like if we're not eliminating waste properly, it's going to slowly build. And then all of a sudden, you reach that threshold and everything overflows, and all these other organ systems will go down the toilet, and no pun intended
No
there.
pun
But
intended.
but yeah, all these other organ systems just start breaking down because what happens is that waste that was supposed to go from the liver, gallbladder, and gut is now building up in the lymphatic system because it can't drain. So now our organs are sitting in their own waste. And then it'll build up into other systems like the brain. So now our brain is sitting in its own waste, and you'll see so many issues with that, like migraines, headaches, dizzy spells, vision issues. I've seen so many crazy things just from drainage issues that I thought was mold toxicity or heavy metals because those attack the brain and central nervous system. And it was really just leaky gut, liver dysfunction. The liver's overwhelmed. If you have fasting insulin issues, it's going to affect your liver, and there's so many different factors that contribute to that, right? And so people don't realize that you don't always have to have symptoms to have a problem. Like if you're waiting until something breaks down, you're already too late. You should be getting this stuff checked far before, the engine light comes on. And there's all these things people ignore, right? Like people who start to get brain fog. Oh, well, I guess I'm just getting older. People who just, they have energy dips in the afternoon. They're like, well, I've been working a lot lately. Or people who ignore the value of sleep and going to sleep at a proper time. And that's when your brain and your liver detoxes when you're sleeping. And so if you're not like taking care of the small daily things, that stuff builds over time, where maybe a decade later, all of a sudden, you've heard this probably from so many people, all of a sudden I had all these issues that came out of nowhere. And it's like, no, those were building for years or even decades before that. And then the symptom came on because we weren't really taking care of ourselves. We were waiting for symptoms to show up. And that's kind of this idea we've also been taught since we were kids, right? Is that, oh, if you don't have any symptoms, you're healthy. If you get symptoms, you go to the doctor and get a drug or a treatment for it. But in reality, like our body is always in survival mode. And when you go over that threshold and it can't handle it anymore, and our bodies are incredibly resilient, they can handle a lot. Now, all of a sudden, things are going to go wrong because your body is literally trying to protect you. It's not breaking down. It's not doing the wrong thing. It's literally trying to save you because something is going wrong that's affecting its ability to survive. And so that's the biggest thing I see, is that buildup of waste and the buildup of toxins in the body eventually affect other systems. Like, for example, gut issues can create kidney and skin issues because those are two of the major organs that detox for you when your liver and your gut and your gallbladder aren't doing a good job. And so people with high blood pressure who are super healthy, they work out all the time. They're like, I don't know why I have high blood pressure. And I'm like, well, your gut is terrible. Your liver's not functioning. So now your kidneys are taking over. That's where a lot of blood pressure is regulated, is in the kidneys. And so as we heal those organs, all of a sudden their blood pressure goes back down to normal and they don't need their meds anymore, or they can at least cut the meds in half. Until they, do some further healing on that. And so there's all these different systems that will pop up as a result of a plugged up drainage system where that gut is just not getting toxins and getting waste products out properly. And even if you are going to the bathroom 2-3 times a day, if you have leaky gut, a lot of those toxins are recirculating back into your bloodstream and damaging the liver and inflaming it. And eventually you're going to end up with, you could get hormone issues or all sorts of other stuff when the liver, has a lot of stress on it like that.
Yeah. Wow. That was so excellent.
Oh, thank you.
That was so excellent. I love that I love that you went that direction. I actually didn't necessarily know where you were going to go, but and it's just odd timing. Again, there's no coincidences, but I was at a gathering last night and I was talking with a friend there who is a recent new friend. And she was talking to me about, some health, how she's really into health and she does a lot of research on her own. And, but she was also talking about some challenges that she's had during her life and so forth. And we got into talking about the lymphatic system. And I said, do you know who Dr. Perry Nicholson is from Stop Chasing Pain?
I love that guy. Yeah. He's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, you did?
Yes. It was one of the most spectacular interviews. I mean, it was like just one of those where I had followed him for so long prior to. And so I just thought if I could interview him one day, and anyway, he came on, I want to say, I don't know if it was 2020, maybe the beginning of 2024, somewhere around there. And anyway, she goes, actually, I think I've seen him on TikTok, like he does the big six. And I said, yes. So we were just chatting, literally, this was just last night. And we were talking about gut function and gut issues and the correlation between the two. And so I thought to myself, and even as you're speaking, I was taking notes about my own recent weeks, just healing from, like I said, like stomach things that have been sort of like up and down. And I thought to myself, have I been really on point with lymphatic? No, I haven't. I haven't because I was so super on point and regular about doing the big six and like, doing the
Mm-hmm.
things that I physically have the capability to do because I cannot do what say you might be able to do or the neighbor might be able to do, but there are
Yeah.
still things. And I thought to myself, it's not about going gung ho, but it's these small, simple steps or just like things that we don't think about that can actually make a big impact. And they also have to do with gut function, which we don't often think about.
Yeah, that's so funny that you brought him up. I actually teach a lot of his lymphatic drainage to my patients.
Love it.
So,
I love it. It's so well, the reason why I like his approach so much and in the big six in general is because it is so easy. It's so what
hmm.
does he say? He said there's a line that he like sort of he says it all the time, like small or big things don't have to be or effective things don't have to be complicated. That's what it is. Effective
Yeah.
things don't have to be complicated. And it's so simple. Friends, you know what? Now that just because we're talking about it, I can even link that episode. So Dr. Kate's episode in the show notes, I can probably link that show if you want to go back to it because it really does a lot of what she's talking about right now. It does. The lymphatic system is often forgotten and it plays
Hmm.
it's just got such a relationship as everything does, but to gut health.
Yeah.
And so again, I love the fact that you went in that direction and the fact that I was just having this conversation last night
That's
is just
so
wild.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
And something people don't realize too with the lymphatic system is your gut and your liver produce about 80% of lymph in your body. And when they're in a state of struggling, when they're inflamed, when you have leaky gut, when they're not doing well, they'll actually overproduce, like 2 to 3, sometimes 4 times the amount of lymphatic fluid that your body needs. And that puts so much stress on your organs and tissues as well, right? Because now you've got all this puffiness and inflammation where people will tell me, like, yeah, I wake up in the morning and my face is puffy, or my feet get really swollen at the end of the day, or my hands swell up. Like one of the symptoms I was having when my friend first started treating me, whenever I would go for a hike or do some sort of like long cardio exercise, my hands would swell up to like twice their normal size. And I was like, what the heck is going on? It was a lymphatic issue. And so once I healed the gut and the liver, all of a sudden my swollen hands went away. And I've seen that with so many people who are like, yeah, I've had swollen feet for a long time, but whatever, it's probably just from sitting at work all day. And then as we heal the gut and the liver starts functioning better, they're like, oh my God, my ankles aren't swollen anymore. I haven't thought about that in a while. Or my hands or my face don't swell up anymore. And a lot of that weight that people lose, is really just lymphatic fluid because we're healing the organs that produce it. So now they can stop producing as much of it. And then also, I'm teaching them ways to, naturally drain that lymphatic fluid, after we heal the gut and liver. That next system right above that is the lymph system. So I'm like, hey, it's really important that we drain our lymph now that we have an open drainage pathway. We're pooping 2 to 3 times a day, our liver's functioning, our gallbladder's doing better. Now let's try to drain all that sewage waste from our body so that it's not
Yeah.
sitting around our organs.
Wow. So good. So good. I love this discussion so much because, and full disclosure and honest moment here. When we first connected, and I thought to myself, oh gosh, like I've done a couple shows where we've really heavily talked about gut, and I don't want to repeat, and I want listeners to have like a fresh perspective
Hmm.
and really like just get different information that maybe they haven't heard or they haven't heard it spoken in the way that this is exactly that. Like this conversation has just been, and we're not done yet, but
Yeah.
it's just been so fantastic. The different like angles and the perspectives and like how you're sort of tying everything together. I've never quite had an episode like this before where we've talked a lot about gut, but it hasn't really come together in this fashion. So I'm so I don't know. I'm just really excited about about
Yeah.
this one. Yeah,
Well, thank you.
it's been
Yeah, I
awesome.
love I love like bringing all the pieces of the puzzle together because like you said, like most people who talk about gut health, they just focus on the gut.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like they don't look at other organ systems, they don't look at how other things influence the gut. They don't maybe necessarily talk about chronic infections or toxins and things that can damage it, but it really is that easy. Like I know it sounds like maybe a little complicated sometimes. If you just heal the organs, remove the stressors, and then allow your body to just get back to homeostasis. Then we can look at, okay, now how are your nutrient deficiencies? Then we can use food as medicine to heal you, because now you're actually absorbing nutrients in your body. Now we can actually maybe eat foods that we couldn't before because our digestion is on track. We're not having immune system reactions to dairy or gluten or, tomatoes or garlic or whatever other food sensitivities people have. And that's when you can really use diet and supplementation to really make a huge difference in people. But I think we kind of forget the foundation before we do that kind of stuff. And like that worked for me. It's worked for so many of my patients. I know obviously there's people out there, like we said earlier, who have, the first supplement they ever tried healed all their issues. So they're like, this is a miracle. And it's like, great, I'm glad it worked for you.
Yeah.
But it
Great,
might not
great for
work for
you.
like the next 99 people. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so that's really where I think the beauty of individualized care is really looking at every system, because everything influences the gut and the gut influences everything. And so you can't just look at, well, do you have leaky gut? Okay, let's start there. It's like, well, what's causing the leaky gut? Do you also have stress? Because that's a huge thing that causes leaky gut. That's been proven in research. Do you have insulin resistance? Do you have, maybe some, emotional stored trauma that you haven't processed yet? Because you look at Chinese medicine, bitterness, resentment, unforgiveness sits in the gallbladder.
Yeah.
So many women have gallbladder issues because, I feel like for the most part, at least when I was a kid, like women tend to hold grudges a little longer than men do. So I think that might be part of the puzzle. And then you look at the liver and like anger is stored there. And so it's so interesting to see like people who are like, yeah, I just get angry all the time and I don't know why. And then you'll see like liver stuff pop up on their testing and you're like, oh, well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And so it kind of lines up with Chinese medicine, which is another, layer of the puzzle as well.
I love Chinese medicine, and in fact, my practitioner, he throws it into his practice,
Hmm.
and I think it's interesting that you
Yeah.
said women tend to hold things, and I think it's just sometimes women. I think not to say that men don't, but I feel like women they carry a lot that they don't discuss. I think
Exactly.
still today, right? I mean, with home and work and children and responsibilities and it's not like I said, it's not to say that men don't carry a huge load in
Hmm.
general, but I think women, we have an emotional aspect to us, I think, that is different. And so we
Yeah.
tend to carry a lot and we hold it in and it's close to the vest. And, I think that we can often get burdened by some of the things that we hold on to, and so it
Yeah.
tends to affect and then you put the hormone, you take hormones and you add that to the mix, which is, very different from men in
Yeah.
general. And so I think just women in general are different. I think that's why we're also more inclined to get things like chronic illness and
Yeah.
deal with autoimmunity. We're just different. So,
Yeah. And that's such a good point about the vulnerability piece. I think that is a huge thing that most people might go their whole lives without really ever diving into, of like, you're holding on to so much because you're not really opening up. And when people ask you if you're okay, you're like, oh, yeah, things are good, living the dream or whatever other, standard thing you hear from people. And it's just so life-changing when you get to that point where you can really open up and just say, hey, I'm really having a hard time. This is how I'm feeling. And just have other people like speak life into you. Like we're
yeah.
meant to be in community. We're meant to share stuff that's going on with us and not just hold it all in. And I always joke with my friends. I'm like, yeah, I used to be severely emotionally constipated as well, which is probably why I was physically constipated. And
Yes, there's something to
just,
be said about that. There's something to be
yeah.
said
And
about that.
a lot of the healing, because I know you mentioned this earlier, where you're like, yeah, I'd done like 90% of the healing, but then like these little things start to creep back. That does happen if you don't really clear off those layers. And that happened to me too. Like a few years after I healed my gut, I started getting gut stuff again. And I was like, oh, this is weird. And, luckily had amazing friends at the time and we were just diving into like all this stuff. And I started opening up and being more vulnerable and realized that like people love when you do that because they feel like honored that you would even share something like that with them. And then it deepens your friendships. It makes you feel like you really have people you can rely on, you can talk to, and social connections are so important in the healing process. Like if you don't have community, it's hard to heal. And so this is something that, I work on a little bit of the emotional piece with people in terms of, Chinese medicine. Like I make them do resentment inventories if they want to, just to see. And people are surprised. They're like, I didn't even know I had this much resentment towards my mom, but I did that resentment inventory. I went and saw my therapist and now I feel way better. And I'm like, yeah, there you go. And so oftentimes like doing that work, really helps people. And then I'll ask them like, do you have someone that you can like call and talk to about anything? And okay, well, maybe let's, if they're open to that, obviously you kind of have to gauge the person because a lot of people don't like talking about that. But, and then just like kind of help them on that journey too of like, okay, well, what kind of community stuff could you start going to, or you can develop those kind of friendships? And obviously, you and I are Christians, so we probably get most of that, that community through our church. And a lot of people have already healed from all this stuff because of like our faith and things that we're taught in church about like opening up and being vulnerable and all that stuff. But a lot of people don't have that. And so I think really getting someone who can kind of highlight all those different avenues of healing really, really helps. And for me, it was processing a lot of that stuff that healed my gut again. Like when those issues came back, it was like, oh, I have all these unprocessed, emotions or belief patterns or, ways that I view myself and ways that I view other people that were kind of contributing to the health issues.
Yeah. Wow. Again, I love that this went in that direction because it is so true. And I think it's a forgotten piece. I think it's a forgotten
Yeah.
spot that a lot of people don't speak on. And it does remind me of just, I don't know if the word was actually said in the last couple minutes, but unforgiveness is so
Yeah.
massive, when it kind again, that's like a very biblical thing too. There's a
Mm-hmm.
reason why forgiveness and unforgiveness is tackled so critically in the Bible
Yeah.
is because it can absolutely crush you physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And
Yeah.
so it really is about, like you said, like taking inventory and getting really clear because again this really can and sometimes probably often that's a lot of words right there does uh, affect things like your gut health, affect things
Mhm.
like stagnation, constipation, the way that our fluids move in the body. I mean, it is one system. And I know I sound like a broken record because I probably say it every single episode. But like you said at the beginning, we're not a bunch of isolated parts. This
Mm-mm.
is one huge system. And if anyone out here thinks that our emotional state, and I am the first person to, again, throw myself out and say that I've seen this connection, is not affecting the way that our physical body is performing, you got another thing coming because
Yeah.
it is so highly tied. And sometimes I honestly think it's, dare I even say number one? I don't know. But when we talk about
Yeah.
stress, that's what it is, you know?
Yeah. I mean, number one, I think the number one thing in terms of, yeah, is, the biggest contributor to stress is probably a lot of that stuff that people never really tackle. And granted, like, our parents grew up in that generation, like where therapy wasn't really a thing. They didn't really talk about this stuff. So you'll see that a lot in like older people because they never really, had someone they could really talk to about that. And it wasn't really mainstream to go see a therapist or to do all these things where you can actually open up to people. And I think that that's the beauty of one of the beauties of social media nowadays is like
Mm,
people are so raw and vulnerable, and it really helps bring breakthrough to other people who are struggling and who don't really know how to do that.
yeah.
How to open up to someone, how to tell them like, hey, I'm having a really rough time, this is what I'm going through, because it does take a lot of courage to do that. And a lot of times we just assume that people don't want to hear our problems. And obviously you have to, know that it's the right person, obviously. But I think like for me, when one of my friends opens up to me, I feel really like honored. I'm just like, thank you so much for sharing that. Cause it brings our friendship to a deeper level too. And then I can help, give back. And I feel like, there's all those studies about, I remember seeing this video where it was like, okay, if you do something kind for someone, it like increases, one of
Yeah.
those I'm totally blanking on which one it is, but it increases one of those molecules in your body that makes you happy and joyful. And then they did studies where if you saw someone doing a kind gesture, it does the same thing in your body. And so it's like there's so much weight to like being able to be there for other people is also like a huge thing that helps like support your health. Like, do you feel like people rely on you and that they can come to you for, important things? Because that is, I think a big part of the puzzle. And also, I think a big thing too is like, especially with moms and people who are just busy all the time, do you actually take time for yourself to just be by yourself? Because you're always, if you're a full-time mom, you're working, like I ask all the moms I work with, I'm like, how much time per week do you give to just yourself to just go read a book or go sit in silence or go, be by yourself away from your husband, away from your kids? Because I think a lot of women, like you said, we just hold on to all this stuff and we don't really take care of ourselves, especially as a practitioner. I had to learn that. Like, I have to take care of myself to be able to take care of other people. And so I really started focusing on that. And it really just changed the way that I was, helping my patients and showing up for them. Because if you're not taking time for yourself, you're eventually going to burn out. And that chronic stress and that burnout is going to burn out your body too. It has a physical reaction. And so I think that's something important to keep in mind too, is, if you're someone listening to this and you're like, I'm busy all the time, can you just take 30 minutes a week to just, talk to your spouse and be like, hey, I just need to go sit outside by myself away from the kids for like 30 minutes, just, and we're good. And, it's like most people be like, oh, yeah, absolutely. Because, they don't want you to burn out. They care about you and you don't have to carry, all this weight on your own. And so I think that's a huge part of the healing process as well. And like stuff that's not really talked about as much because it sounds kind of like, oh, like woo woo or therapy, whatever, and but it's like a real thing, like burnout is real and you don't want to get to that point where your body is so overwhelmed that things just start shutting down, because that is just not a good place to be.
And I think that unfortunately, there's probably more people today that are living in survival mode than not,
Hmm. Oh
because
yeah.
it's not just like the stress of your individual life, it's also the stress of the world. And I think the combination of everything, I mean, people are really on fumes. And so, yeah, it's interesting. I was gonna ask you as we sort of, start to wind down here, just sort of give everybody some call to actions, but I feel like you just nailed one of the biggest call to actions ever, which is
Mhm.
literally just looking at your life, at your week, at your days, and seeing what you can do. Because in so many ways, I think that, again, one of the biggest call to actions or one of the biggest pieces is, where are you mentally? Where
Mhm.
are where how is your nervous system operating? And I go through this with myself, or I see myself get triggered, or like behind the scenes, like at home, or I'm screaming at the dog because she won't stop barking or whatever, and I'm like, why am I screaming? Like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, what do I need to do for myself right now? What am I lacking? Because I'm lacking something. There's something going on where I need to like bring myself back to. And so I think that is probably one of, if not the biggest place to start. And you can tack on to that right now, because I do want to ask you, as we, like I said, as we sort of taper down, people are probably wondering, okay, well, like, yeah, I feel like this all sounds so great, but I don't know where to start. And
Yeah.
so, what would your advice be to people who are listening? Because they are here, they are definitely. I mean, there are. I could probably think more of, if it's not them, it's somebody that they know,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, what would your say top two or three places to start be?
Yeah, it's a great question because you guys, a lot of the healing process, a lot of it is free. And like it's really just talking about what you said of like not only how much in your week are you allowing yourself to be taken care of by yourself, but how much time do you spend per day actually like taking care of yourself. And so there's simple things you can do. And with the internet nowadays, you could look up so much free stuff. But breathing exercises every single day. There's two books that are written on the power of breath. I know a lot of people are just like, oh, breathing, I already breathe. And it's like, okay, just again, we don't know what we don't know, right? So
Right.
there's two books. One's called The Oxygen Advantage, and the other one's called Breath or
Oh,
Breathe,
I
Breath.
have
I think it's called
yeah,
Breath.
but I
But
forget
those
the
two
name.
books are phenomenal. Like they literally show you the power of, doing what's called exhalation focused breathing. There's all these different exercises you can look up. But this stuff is so powerful. If you just spend 2 minutes a day doing breathing exercises, and I would just have you start with like box breathing, where you're basically going to set a timer on your phone for 2 minutes. You're going to breathe in for 4 seconds, breathe out for eight. And usually, if you breathe out through your mouth, it's a lot easier to do a longer breath out. It's a lot harder if you do your nose, but breathe in for four, hold it for four, breathe out for eight, hold it for 4 seconds, and just keep doing that cycle. That will calm down your nervous system more than any biohack out there. Like it's literally this simple where I teach people this stuff and they're like a month into the detox and they already feel like 60% better because they're doing the lifestyle stuff, the nervous system down regulation. It's not necessarily just the detox, it's both. It's like, yes, we're removing stuff from your body that's not supposed to be there. We're healing up the organs, but we're also getting your brain to get out of that fight or flight into the rest and digest so that your gut can actually work, because that's why it's called rest and digest. Is if you're in sympathetic cortisol, like, fight or flight mode all the time, you can't digest your food, you can't go to the bathroom, like your body's going to use resources to survive, because it's in survival mode, it's not going to use resources to do those daily functions that need to be done to keep you healthy. And so if you just do 2 minutes of breathing every single day, if you do some grounding every single day at sunrise or sunset, one of the most powerful things you can do, and all that means is you're sticking your feet in grass and sand, something that's connected to the earth. AstroTurf doesn't count. It's got to be real, actual like earth. And I know obviously a lot of you live up north, so you can get grounding mats. I know earthing.com is the only one I trust for that, because they were like the original grounding people. So I haven't looked into any other companies, but I have their grounding mat. Obviously I don't have this problem because I live in Southern California, so we don't get snow, so I can ground every day. But if you live up north, you can get a grounding mat. You can just put like a thick, mat down on the grass the night before it snows, and then you can walk out the next morning, flip the mat over, and you'll have a little patch of grass that you can stick your feet in. You only need 2 minutes to get huge changes on your blood. Like, it actually has been shown in research to unstick your blood and make you less likely to have blood clots. And then if you get up to like 15, 20 minutes, there's other benefits too for inflammation in the body. I mean, this stuff is so powerful, and it's all free.
Yeah.
It's like you can go for an ocean swim if you live by the ocean. That's like full body grounding. You're getting minerals into your system. You're in the sunshine, so you're getting vitamin D. And if you just do those two things every single day, I guarantee you will feel so much better after like a week or two. And I give this stuff to people before we even start them on a detox, especially if they're just, high anxiety, like you can tell like they're just way overwhelmed. I'm like, okay, let's calm down your nervous system first, and then we'll go after the stuff in your body that's not supposed to be there. And they get phenomenal results. And I still have people texting me today just being like, hey, I'm still feeling amazing. And I do grounding like 5 days a week. I do the breathing every day, and it still helps a lot. Thank you so much for, teaching me that stuff. And it's really just those daily and weekly habits that if you keep up with them, like the big six, the lymphatic drainage, grounding, breathing, sleeping at a proper time, giving yourself enough time to recover and restore your body at night, not just staying up and like having the sleep debt kind of chase you down for years. Those are the ways that you really keep yourself well on a daily and weekly basis. And so that's what I would recommend for people to start. They're all free. Going to bed at a proper time, free. Grounding is free. Breathing is free. And so there's all these things you can look up online of like breath work, breathing exercises. I wouldn't do Wim Hof yet. That definitely activates the fight or flight system. So make sure your body's ready for that before you kind of go into that. But there are a lot of really amazing benefits to it once you're in a state where you're not stuck in that fight or flight. So that's where I would start. This is stuff I teach all my patients. It's so simple. And they're like, I can't believe I feel so much better from doing stuff that I could have done on my own without paying you. And I'm just like, yeah, but it's the combination, right? It's like, we need both, And so, but it's just so cool because, I shortcutted the process for them by giving them super simple things to do every day. And now they're feeling so much better. And now we can, safely tackle, the parasites or the fungus or the heavy metals without them having a severe, detox reaction, because their nervous system isn't in that fight or flight state.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so good. And also, I'm sort of checking myself right now. Like, I need to just give myself a minute, probably at some point today, and be like, okay, what have you not been doing that you need to do that you know is so simple? Because why is it that the simple things are often the hardest things? And I don't mean they're hard to do. I mean, they're hard to be consistent about. They're
Yep.
hard to just implement on a regular basis, because it's like so much easier to sit on the couch. Who am I talking to right now? Not just me. Sit on the couch and scroll social media,
Yeah.
right? Or, do whatever it is. Like,
hmm
some people would rather go up and fold laundry than go sit there for 2 minutes and breathe, but
Yeah.
it's like, it's so easy. And, I also love the fact, and honestly, just, it speaks to you too, because, not every practitioner out there, not every doctor out there, there's, how do I say it? Oh gosh, I need to tread lightly here. It speaks to your authenticity. How about that? Because you're giving people things that are so easy, they're seeing results. And oftentimes there are cases and people that you work with that need both, like you said, we have to incorporate those lifestyle changes, these small little practices, and also tackle things. You're also telling people, look, you might have drastic results based on these free things. Like, you might not even need you might not even need me, or you might not even need a practitioner, like, because have you even done these small things?
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
appreciate practitioners and doctors like you who are giving these really easy tools that you can implement into your daily or weekly life that can have such an impact and that they're free. Like it costs you absolutely nothing to do.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and yeah, like granted, most people do need more work,
Yes,
but
of
it's
course.
like it's a great place to start,
Yes. Yeah.
because also stress and your immune system kind of function like a seesaw. So if stress
Mm.
goes up, your immune system tanks. So people are like, I get food poisoning all the time. I get sick every year. I'm like, okay, how are your stress levels? And they're like, I am incredibly stressed. I'm like, okay, let's calm that down. And now they're like, oh, I didn't get sick. And I was around a bunch of my sick nieces over the weekend. And I'm like, well, that's cool. So it's really like people they overestimate the ability of biohacking to fix all their issues, and they underestimate the ability of these daily or weekly habits to actually fix their problems.
Yeah.
And that's what I see the most is like everyone's all about, I just bought my red light panels, I have a sauna, I'm doing cold plunges every morning, and I'm just looking at them and I'm like, what are you doing? Like you don't necessarily need all that stuff. Now, is it beneficial? Absolutely. But again, everything in the right timing, right? Is like
Exactly.
most people won't heal from diet in America because there's so many toxins in our food that are not allowed in Europe. Now, if you go to Europe and for 6 months, you could probably heal your gut issues
Yeah.
because their food is so much better. But it's really hard in America because we have so many unregulated chemicals. So before I always tell people like, let's, again, fix the foundation and then we can talk about diet and like what quality of food to buy and like how to look for good quality food and like what to look for when you go to the grocery store. Because I know not everyone lives in Southern California. Like we have, farmers markets every single day in one part of the city. And so I'm always able to go out and get fresh food from the farms that I know most people in other parts of the country can't. And so I teach people that stuff too about like how to know where to order food from, what kind of quality to look for, because that's really what's important. It's not this one diet fixes everything, like carnivore fixes this or paleo fixes this or like pescatarian. It's really what works for your body because everyone's different. I know so many people who do well with pescatarian. I know so many people who do well with carnivore, with animal-based diet. I'm more of the animal-based one. And it really just depends on the person, but I think at the root of it is just the quality of the food that really matters. And when you teach people that stuff, it takes away a lot of those toxins that were building up in their system for decades, and that really helps them too. And it's so simple. Like it doesn't have to be complicated, you guys. You don't have to buy like 10 biohacking machines to, get your health back on track. And I think, we've kind of drifted as a society into that world of I'm going to biohack my health. And it's like, well, maybe you just need to sleep more than 6 hours a night. Maybe let's start there, like maybe it's just
Right.
that simple.
Right.
And when you understand how the whole body works together, when you're sleeping, if your sleep gets messed up for a long period of time, it really shoots up your fasting insulin and your blood sugar. People don't know that. And they're like, I don't know why I'm insulin resistant or gaining weight. I work out all the time. I eat healthy. And the first thing I ask them, how many hours a night do you sleep? They're like, oh, like 5. And I'm just like, what are you doing? Like, just start there?
Yeah.
And it's just so simple sometimes, but I feel like we overcomplicate it because, the biohacking is more sexy and like cool to talk about. And I got all this expensive equipment and now I'm healing myself. And in reality, you might not even need that stuff. Or maybe you need to heal something else before you even do cold plunges and Wim Hof breathing, which really, jacks up your cortisol if you're not ready for it. And
Yep.
so
Yep.
so that's kind of the stuff that I would see with people for sure.
So good. It's so so good. I totally agree, and I talk. I it's often a common theme here with
Yeah.
us just forgetting the foundations. And it's not to say that these. I mean,
Hmm.
I have gadgets, but again, like, do I think, and I feel like, thank goodness, I do have a decent perspective on the biohacking things that I do own, such as red light or sauna, which I have not done. This is just like off, just off the cuff, I'll share. I haven't done my sauna in a year because I intuitively have felt like my body, from these things that I've been going through, my body from a adrenal perspective is
Hmm.
not necessarily it. I don't really think that doing sauna regularly would be beneficial to me. I'm not, as much as I like the warmth and I like this and like that. It's just I was noticing as I was getting in the sauna that I was having, more heart palpitations, and I was, there was things that were indicators, I should say,
Yeah.
that were showing that, hey, maybe this is not the correct biohacking tool or thing to implement at this time. It doesn't mean it's not good. It's
Yeah.
just that, like, it's not the gadget for you at this in this season, or whatnot.
Yeah.
But you don't often need. I don't know. I got off a tangent a little bit, but you don't often need like all of these
Yeah.
things. They're fun, like you said, they're sexy, um, but and they're cool, and you see the influencers doing all the stuff, and like they're
Yeah.
trying to convince you that you need everything.
Hmm.
I am a huge fan of red light because I think it's great. But again, and it also depending on where you live, it's not absolutely essential for you to heal.
Exactly. And I think you touched on probably the most important part of this whole episode is that, individualized care is really important because yes, there are supplements out there that are phenomenal when you give them to people at the right time. There are, biohacking tools out there that are amazing when you give it to people at the right time, and it's
Okay.
just it's really looking at the whole picture like we've been talking about this whole episode of it's not just your gut causing the gut issues. It's everything. And that's why you really have to just take this instead of having this myopic like pinpoint view of the problem, we've really got to expand our, visual field and look at everything. Look at the organs, look at the emotional aspect, the stress aspect, the sleep issues, Also, how often are you going outside every day? Most people spend more than 90% of their time indoors. Our whole sleep cycle, our hormones are regulated by sunlight. If you're wearing sunglasses all the time when you go outside, you're actually inhibiting your brain's ability to detect whether or not it's daytime or nighttime. So that can also screw up your sleep cycle. So, one of the number one things I give people too, just a little extra bonus, don't wear sunglasses when you're outside unless you're driving into the sun, like obviously put
Sure,
your sunglasses on,
of course.
but it really that light into your eyes really does help your body know when to secrete melatonin to allow you to fall asleep naturally, when to produce hormones, all that stuff. And so it's really not as complicated as people make it out to be.
So true.
And it's just that's such a good point that you made is like, yeah, sauna is great unless it's not good for you at that time. And then it can actually make you worse and make you feel a little bit off.
Yeah.
And I've had those times too where I used to love doing saunas, but I got to this point where I was like, you know what? I feel like intuitively my body isn't gonna like this today. So I took,
Mm,
6 months off of doing the sauna and now I got back into it. My body feels good again. And it's just learning to listen to your body is also incredibly, important. And most people don't do it. They're not really in touch with what does normal feel like for me. So then when things get abnormal, those little warning signs, the engine lights coming on of brain fog and fatigue. And, I'm waking up in the middle of the night now when I used to sleep through the whole night. They ignore those signals because they don't know what normal is for their body.
oh my gosh, that's a whole nother
Yeah,
episode, my friend. That's a whole episode just in and of itself. Is
I know.
tuning in and listening to your body and not being
Yeah.
the difference between that and like extreme hypervigilance, which, is a whole nother thing, but that it's so true. It's like we just
Yeah.
have to really stop generalizing and realize that individual state, individual seasons,
Hmm.
the way that you feel, something can be absolutely excellent. Again, for listeners who have been listening to the last several shows, this has been talked about so much lately, but something can be amazing for your neighbor and absolutely terrible for you. And it
Hmm.
has nothing to do with the thing. It has everything to do with your state.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's so, so
Yeah.
true.
And something I always tell people in regards to that is that, okay, externally, like we only differ, our genetics only differ by what, like 1% or less than 1%, but we look completely different.
Mhm.
Imagine how different your internal body functions from that 1% difference. If our external, like our face structure, our eye color, our hair color looks that much different, yes, there are a lot of similarities in physiology, but there's also a lot that we don't know. Like we don't know why some people, they take a TUDCA supplement and it fixes their gallbladder issues, and then other people take it and they can't stop going to the bathroom and they can't handle it. And it's just, everyone is so different and so unique that you really just have to look at everything and see what does this person actually need? What does their body need? Not just, generic supplement for a generic issue.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Which is why, individualized care and working with someone, especially if you've got a lot of issues and you've been suffering for a long time, why
yeah.
it's important, why it's important.
Yeah.
So as we really come to a close here, I just want to give you an opportunity before I ask you where people can find you and all the things. If there's anything that you really want to leave people with, if there's one thing, I know we've talked about so many things, but I want to give you an opportunity just to, tell, or even if you're speaking to somebody who's just been through it all. You're right, right?
Yeah.
And you've been in that position, I've been in that position, and to some degree, right? I'm still very much on a journey. So I
Yeah.
understand and I have so much empathy for people that have been suffering because it can be so overwhelming. What would you want
Yeah.
to leave them with?
Yeah, well, thank you again for having me on the show, Vanessa. This has been a really awesome conversation. And, I'm really, really glad that, we were able to chat and talk about so many different things. It's always nice when it just feels like a real conversation and, less like an interview. So I'm hoping that people get a lot of value out of what we talked about today. Hopefully it kind of put the puzzle pieces together for them. But yeah, I would just say, if you're someone listening to this podcast and, you're thinking to yourself, I can't even imagine what it would be like to go to the bathroom every day or, to be able to eat foods that don't, that I don't have repercussions for the next 5 days, or to be able to actually, enjoy potlucks and go out to eat with friends, or, or to not look 6 months pregnant after each meal with bloating, then, I just want to encourage you to do one of two things. So, if you go to my Instagram, that's the best place to, get all this information that we talked about today. Again, my name is Dr. Kate Davis. So my Instagram is just at Dr. Kate Davis. I was surprised that that handle was still left over. I was like, what happened to all the other Kate Davises? Did none of them become doctors? Because it's like a really common name, but yeah, it's just DrKateDavis. But go ahead and follow me on there because I give you guys so much wisdom, so much free content, so much of putting all the pieces of the puzzle together to really help you understand, what is causing the bloating, what is causing the constipation, what is causing the acid reflux or the IBS, and, all those issues that you guys are dealing with. So start there first. I've got so much, I post daily content on how to move the needle forward. And if you're someone who's on here who's just like, yeah, I just really need someone to help me through this. I need someone to shortcut the process, to tell me exactly what to do, to get to the root cause. I'm actually offering you guys a really big discount. So anyone listening to this podcast, if you just DM me the number 100 on Instagram, again, that's at Dr. Kate Davis, then I will give you $100 off an initial consult plus a labs package. So you'll basically get the initial consult for free. We'll go through your full health history, get a full picture of what's going on in your body. We'll do some lab testing to see, what drainage pathways aren't functioning. Do you have leaky gut? What infections, what toxins are in your body? We'll talk about stress levels and all the other stuff that we talked about on this podcast. And you'll get a really full understanding of what exactly is going on in your body. And I'll come up with a personalized care plan for you. So that is something I wanted to offer you guys because I know how frustrating it can be to just go years without an answer, and I hope that I can shortcut the process for you so that you don't have to go almost a decade like I did. But one last thing that I want to leave with your audience too is, because I feel like a lot of people at this point just they've kind of lost hope. Maybe they've tried so many things and nothing's worked and they're just, they're at kind of the end of, what they know how to do. And I just want to let you know, guys, like I have seen so many people heal completely from constipation, bloating, IBS, acid reflux, and all the things that are associated with that, like anxiety, depression, panic attacks, because it's all interconnected to your gut. People with migraines, like your friend that you were talking about earlier, Vanessa, I've seen so many people heal and so many peripheral issues go away, like, cavities go away, kidney stones go away, blood pressure regulates, all this cool stuff. And so I just want you to know that, healing is possible. Just because you haven't found something that works yet doesn't mean that you won't ever find it. So I just want to encourage you guys, don't ever give up on finding an answer. When you get to the root cause and you heal at the foundational level, you can get to that point where you no longer have those issues. Like I don't get gut issues anymore. And if I do, I know how to fix it because again, I'm in tune with my body. How much did I sleep this week? Am I stressed? How much time did I give to myself to just rest this week? And so I just want to encourage you to, don't ever stop, finding an answer. It's out there for you.
Wonderful. Well, I couldn't have said it any better. I'm so, like I said earlier, first of all, let's back up for a second. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for connecting with me. This has been such a breath of fresh air. And again, like I was sharing, I didn't necessarily know what angles we were going to, yeah. we largely kind of like, tackled this in more of a casual way. And I just absolutely love all of the things that were brought up organically and kind of the direction and the perspectives that you gave. And so it really has been a pleasure to host you because I have loved this conversation and you're fantastic in terms of the way that you articulate and that you have explained things. And even me, it's like, I'm sitting here looking at my own self and listening to you and going, okay, like, what can I implement? Because as I always say, I'm always learning as well. So I just want to say thank you. And I could not think of a better way to end the show by reminding people that healing is possible because it oftentimes becomes a thing where you have been suffering for so long that you can't see through the cloud. And it's not necessarily your fault. It's not a shame type of situation. It's literally what physiologically starts to happen with your brain is that you've just been in a state of, kind of just circling the drain for so long, and things have been so tough. And so, it's hard. It's super hard to have hope. But,
Yeah.
you're a perfect example of the fact that healing really is possible. So I felt like that was just an absolutely perfect thing to leave us with. And again, I appreciate it so much. Friends, all of the information that Dr. Kate talked about in terms of her offerings and her social media handle and all of that, along with the couple of books that she recommended. I do remember the author's name of Breath. It's James Nestor. I looked it up quickly while you
Yeah.
were speaking, but it's a great book. I have it. I have it on my Audible. And we can put all that in for you. We can also tack in the Stop Chasing Pain, Dr. Perry Nicholson for
Yeah.
limb stuff, and also I'm sure Dr. Kate talks plenty about it on her page as well. So again, all of this stuff will be there available for you in the show notes. As always, as I say, if you cannot find something or you need assistance, don't hesitate to reach out to either me or Dr. Kate. We will be here for you always. So with that, thank you so much again. It has been such a pleasure. I have thoroughly loved this, thoroughly enjoyed it so much. It's
Yeah.
just so
Thank you so
awesome.
much. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been amazing. It was a good episode. I loved it.
Yeah, likewise. All right, my friends, until the next time, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you have a super, super blessed day, and I will see you on the next episode.